Good morning, and thank you for being here. I want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues, especially Leader Pelosi, Whip Hoyer, Chairman Crowley, Chairwoman Grisham, my fellow Brooklynite, and Congressman Serrano, Luis Gutierrez. I traveled to Puerto Rico last Friday, and I can say the situation was shocking. Those images were burned into my mind. Yet, what I also saw was inspiring. The spirit of the Puerto Rican people who refuse to quit, who will not give up, and who want to get back to rebuilding the island they love. Unfortunately, this administration's response has been inexcusably slow and ineffective. Yesterday, I was proud that more than 140 of my colleagues joined me in writing to the President and asking for some basic, tangible steps to improve the situation. Now, we need to start focusing on Congress. Today, we're asking Speaker Ryan to bring legislation to the floor to help relieve Puerto Rico's suffering. We need a measure that will provide supplemental funding, just as we acted after Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. And we are going to need funds for community development block grants to rebuild. Puerto Rico's electrical grid was basically destroyed. We will need federal resources for energy repair, and we will need funding for greater security. There will be environmental concerns to address, with Puerto Rico having 14 Superfund sites. Now, let me add, there are also medical emergencies happening right now in Puerto Rico. But Puerto Rico's healthcare system was eroding long before Maria. Medicaid funding is due to run out if Congress doesn't act. This supplemental package needs to include funding to shore up Puerto Rico's Medicaid crisis. This was a pressing priority before Maria, but it is more important today. This has to happen soon, not weeks from now, not in late October. This needs to be an immediate priority for Speaker Ryan and the Republican leadership. We need to see action as early as next week. Remember, our Puerto Rican brothers and sisters are American citizens. They have fought in every conflict. They have shed blood. They have died for our freedoms. It is morally incumbent upon us to help them. And by us, I do not mean Democrats. I do not mean Republicans. I mean all of us. To the Puerto Rican people right now, to the people who are collapsed in the airport trying to get off the island, to those of you in houses without roofs, waiting for the power to come back. Worry, you are not. You are running out of drinking water. To those on the mainland who are worried about their loved one on the island, let me say this. We're going to keep fighting for you. Do not give up. We will not give up. Thank you. Estamos aquí hoy reunidos con el liderato demócrata y mis hermanos puertorriqueños, José Serrano, José Gutiérrez, Darren Soto y nuestros hermanos latinos, hispanos, para decirle al presidente, al Speaker Ryan, que la hora de actuar hoy, de actuar para un nuevo suplemento que simplemente va a ser ayuda federal para las Islas Vírgenes y Puerto Rico. Yo no creo que yo tenga que explicar nada más. The images are there. Las imágenes están ahí for the whole world to see. Puerto Rico, nuestros hermanos, nuestros ciudadanos están sufriendo. Muchos de ellos están muriendo. Eso no es el trato que ciudadanos americanos deben recibir. Les prometo tanto a la diáspora puertorriqueña como al pueblo de Puerto Rico que no vamos a descansar hasta que se haga justicia para los puertorriqueños. Gracias. So let me call now on our great leader, House Democratic Leader Pelosi.
Thank you very much, Congresswoman Velasquez, for bringing us together this morning. Thank you for your ongoing commitment to people of our entire country, and that includes Puerto Rico. Thank you for sharing the grief of your family. You were born and raised there and came to America to be an historic figure here, to be one of the few women in congressional history to chair a full committee of the Congress of the United States. You share that proud heritage with Luis Gutierrez, whose family is from Puerto Rico, as well as from Jose Serrano. And Mr. Soto, he's half Italian. Hey. Yeah. But nonetheless, they are serious messengers to us on the ongoing of the challenges facing the people of Puerto Rico now. We can't make them whole right this minute, but we can give them hope immediately, and that is what we must do. We want the people of Puerto Rico to know that their plight challenges the conscience of our country, challenges our conscience, and we must meet that challenge. And so that would take the form, of doctors, helicopters, heavy trucks, water, food, generators, temporary housing, medical supplies. They need it yesterday. We must move more quickly. And to the people of the Virgin Islands, we share your concerns equally. And again, we want to give you hope as we try to make you whole. Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands need resources. They need our focus, and they need the full commitment of this Congress and this administration now and into the future. As sad as the situation is, it does provide an opportunity for the islands to redo their grids so that they will be leaders into the future of how people receive their electricity, their communication, and the rest. Right now, we have some challenges in infrastructure there. Helicopters can leapfrog over that, but as we rebuild in both places, to do so with leading the way into the future. Then this is a national emergency. Millions of our fellow Americans are in peril, and we have to join with them. We're calling on our colleagues, Democrats and Republicans alike, to move quickly. Time, the most valuable commodity of all, which makes the biggest difference in how people needs can be addressed in the relief effort. Time is very important. So we want everything to move faster. To the extent that that means acts of Congress, we have to move quickly as well. But again, my college roommate, Sonia Zapata, I haven't been able to hear from her. Just anecdotal, but nonetheless indicative of what everyone is going through when trying to reach loved ones there. It is, again, a challenge to our conscience that we will meet. These are all God's children. If we are people of faith, as we profess to be, we have to know and honor our responsibility to meeting the needs of all God's children. With that, I'm pleased to yield to our distinguished whip, Mr. Hoyer.
I want to thank Nydia Velasquez and Joe Serrano and my good friend Luis Gutierrez, all who have a very, very personal relationship. But all of us have a responsibility and a relationship to our fellow Americans, whether they live in Puerto Rico or they live in the Virgin Islands. 3.6 million of our fellow citizens are at risk as we speak here on this platform. Dire risk. A humanitarian crisis exists. Many Americans are still trying to get in contact, as the leader has said and others have said, with their relatives and their friends who are stranded and cannot get to the help that they need. Communications have been cut off. Power is out and will be out for months, perhaps longer in some places. Food, water, fuel, medical services becoming more and more scarce. Hospitals are running low on supplies and medications and are limited in their ability to care for people without power. I talked to Secretary Price early this morning about the availability of dialysis. We have had people who need dialysis, been without it for 9 days. They are at risk, and some have already died. This is a humanitarian crisis and demands the speediest, most robust reaction and action that we can take. I am pleased that we now have a military coordinator. That's what happened in Katrina in New Orleans. General Honoré was appointed. Now we have General Kim, and that needs to proceed with all dispatch. We have urged President Trump to muster every available federal resource, which, as he points out, is unmatched anywhere in the world. If we want to do it, we can do it. You had a picture on the front page of the Washington Post of people wading through deep, muddy, probably polluted water to get to help, to get to food, to get to water. Frankly, the Corps of Engineers could build a pontoon bridge in a very short period of time. Given the humanitarian crisis now unfolding and the complexity of the challenges on the ground, a more robust federal response is required. I'm glad that the ship Comfort, the hospital ship, is on its way to Puerto Rico. It should have been, and to the Virgin Islands. It should have been sent the day after the hurricane hit. Governor Rosselló has requested additional help from the Defense Department. I support him in that request. I hope the administration, and will urge the administration, and in talking to Secretary Price today, urged him to meet that request. Representative Velasquez led a letter to the President requesting the appointment of Senior General. That's been done. Thank you, Nydia, for leading that effort. Thank you, Luis and Joe Serrano, and the caucus for leading those efforts. We're calling on Speaker Ryan, as you have heard, to bring to the floor legislation that would provide emergency funding and enact other policies that will help those affected. I'm going to be talking about that in just a few minutes with the Majority Leader on the floor of the House of Representatives. I know that he talked to me about going down there. I think he's planning on going down there. That's appropriate to do. But we need to get legislation right here on the floor, making sure the resources, the personnel, the medical help is available. We need to work together to help our fellow citizens, our fellow Americans who live in Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. There is much America as Maryland, as Texas, as Florida. And we need to treat them the same. We need to work together to help our fellow citizens. And we must act quickly. I am pleased to see the accelerated effort. It's never too late to do the right thing. But those folks on dialysis, they can't wait another minute to save their lives. And there are other stories just like that. I am now pleased to, is the chairman of the caucus here? The chairman of the Hispanic caucus, I was looking for Crowley, but Michelle Lujan Grisham, the chair of the Congressional Hispanic Caucus.
Thank you, Whip Hoyer. I really appreciate the opportunity to just reiterate these points. One, it is really unfathomable to both the Hispanic caucus and the Democratic caucus that we are reporting to you again today that we're having to tell the administration and our Republican colleagues that there should be action. They should have appointed somebody to manage this crisis early. They knew the storm was coming. You shouldn't be launching any of these efforts from here more than a week later. It's outrageous. And so while the administration says we are responding, we're getting, there's been some public reports that we're getting positive feedback from Puerto Rico. You have hospitals, the majority of which that are either now out of power or will be out of power in 1 to 2 days. They cannot do surgery in the afternoons because it is too hot. The last time I checked, when you're sick, you don't time it so that you can get that surgical procedure when it's coolest. This is outrageous. They have the resources. We have the resources. We should not be leaving here without being very clear that what they need is a coordinated military response, which is why one other effort that the Hispanic caucus, along with our entire Democratic caucus colleagues, is looking at marshaling resources through states and asking governors about how they might support us with their National Guards or any other resources that get people on the ground to do exactly the kinds of things that you're hearing us talk about. They have to have a coordinated effort to rebuild. In the islands, all of those hospitals, reports suggest, are going to have to be rebuilt. None of these schools are available for these children. And we're dealing with serious medical crises every minute of every day. We heard from a gentleman yesterday, I don't know how that information even got to members of Congress, about his wife being in labor and nowhere to go. I can't even imagine that circumstance. And I just want to just make sure that we're really clear about what this looks like, because I don't think that we're doing that right job. 97% of the island's residents, as you heard, have no electricity. So what does that really mean? That's the combined populations of the states of Wyoming, Vermont, and Alaska not having any electricity. I have no doubt that the responses to those states in this situation would be far different than the situation we're having today. So I really appreciate the incredible leadership and expertise of my caucus and of the Democratic caucus and my colleagues, and we urge this administration to lead and to govern, and our Republican colleagues to provide all of the resources at their disposal to protect Americans in this situation. It's tantamount to Mother Nature's atomic bomb, and we're doing very little. Thank you very much. And with that, who's next?
Ms. Clark is
Representative
here?
Clark, are you here?
No.
I don't see Yvette.
So she was representing.
And we've got
Virgin
Jose
Islands.
Serrano.
Thank you. I want to thank all my colleagues for coming together. The support that we've gotten has been tremendous. Puerto Rico is in the situation it's in. I'm not going to repeat it. But there are other crises coming that people haven't even started to think about. For instance, someone was telling me that when the water settles, they'll have to count how many dogs and cats and animals are dead that were drowned. And if a child touches any of those animals, you could be spreading a disease. So we're talking about that situation. Then you have the mental health of the community in general, but the children who've seen water up to their parents' chests now will eventually have a school to go to somewhere. They don't know where or when, and what would their mental health be. But what we're doing here today more than anything else is telling Congress to act and act quickly. And that's a brief statement to bring the supplies necessary. As I speak, I was getting texts that the general is speaking to the Puerto Rican people right now and to the press in Puerto Rico, and that there's a sense, I'm told by this reporter, that some things are changing in the attention they're getting, and that's what it's about. It's about hope. I've heard psychologists on radio in Puerto Rico, the few stations that are open, saying, we need from us in these states help, but we don't need to spare because we need hope here to survive. So with your permission, I'm going to do something in Spanish now that I feel is important. Al pueblo de Puerto Rico, a mis hermanos y hermanas, a nuestros hermanos puertorriqueños, yo sé que mis palabras quizás no puedan aliviar todo el dolor que ustedes sienten y lo que están sufriendo, pero simplemente quiero que sepan que no están solos, que nosotros estamos con ustedes, que nosotros haremos todo lo posible para remediar esta situación y llevarla a un punto mundial. Y cuando Puerto Rico se haga de nuevo, se levante de nuevo, a ser un Puerto Rico más moderno, más fuerte, más hábil a tratar con estas situaciones. When we reconstruct Puerto Rico, we must build a Puerto Rico that's stronger than it is now, with a stronger electrical grid, with a stronger services for the community and building properly. We're all here together. We're all here to work together for Puerto Rico. God bless Puerto Rico. The waiving of the Jones Act was a good idea, but we want to stretch it out to be longer than, 10 days? Mm-hmm. Much longer than that. And we need to just continue the fight. We won't give up. This is something seriously. We can't mention it enough, and I'll close with this. This is not a foreign country. And even a foreign country that needs our help should get our help. These are American citizens, and they need our help. And the president, unfortunately, last night, and I'm not here to attack the president, said Puerto Rico's an island out in the ocean, and you can't get a truck to drive there. Well, Mr. President, talk to your national security team. They certainly had plans for 50 years to invade an island in the Caribbean, so they know how to get troops and the military into an island. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Well, first, thank you to all my colleagues for being here. I would like to see the fire and fury of this administration when it comes to a rescue effort of the people of Puerto Rico. I have not seen the fire and fury when it comes to delivery of food, to delivery of medicine, to delivery of petroleum, to the delivery of a rescue mission to save people's lives. I haven't seen it. And Mr. President, you say it's a small island out there in the ocean. Well, you built a golf course there, so you obviously know where it's at because you've played golf there many times. If it were a golf exercise, you surely knew where to find it. Well, guess now. Now you're President of the United States of America. You know where it's at. Go and deliver the necessary things that the people of Puerto Rico need today. That's first. And, you know, for decades, you surround yourself with generals. Ask the generals, Mr. President. For decades, they bombed the island of Vieques. For decades, they bombed the island of Vieques. You know where it's at. Ask the French. Ask the English. Ask any of the members of NATO who visited with the United States for decades, Puerto Rico, to bomb it. It is not time. You found it very well when it was leisurely for golf and to open up a business. You found it very well, the United States, when it was time to practice bombing. It's now time to help the American citizens. And I would ask the press that you begin and you end with that expression. Because I, for one, and everybody here is going to leave aside how it is they think the future of Puerto Rico is going to evolve politically in terms of status. That's not what's important today. The Congress of the United States, when it passed Promesa and imposed a control board of 7 people over that island, said, we own you. We don't need to talk to you. We're going to usurp your local government. It is time to restore power to the local government of Puerto Rico in this crisis so that the governor of Puerto Rico can use his resources in order to manage this crisis. We think that is very, very important. My friend Jose and Nidia, and we've been talking, Nidia and Jose, for years. I want to say decades, but it's been decades, about the Jones Act. And I just want to take a moment, because if you do not understand it, then you will not be able to relay how important it is. 10 days lifting the Jones Act is not enough. 18 months, and this is Katrina 2017. Let's have no misunderstanding about it. This is Katrina 2017, and it took, after 18 months, only 8 schools in New Orleans were open after 18 months. Now, I want you to think of how 3.4 million people who have no escape route from the island of Puerto Rico. So we need to rebuild those schools. We need to open those schools immediately. And if we know that only 8 of them after 18 months were open then, we are going to take a count to see how long it takes to reopen the schools. No more Katrinas, no more 18 months. The children of Puerto Rico should be going back to school as quickly and as rapidly as possible. We can have, ladies and gentlemen, we can send hundreds of thousands of members of our armed forces and deploy them thousands of miles away from the United States of America, and they can be spread out over hundreds of miles, and they communicate with one another. We should have that communication system set up on the island of Puerto Rico. And no, San Juan's not the only airport. Aguadilla and Ponce, our Army Corps of Engineers and our Army and our armed forces should be rebuilding those so that people can get there. So there are many things we can do, but I think these are among them. I'm going to be traveling there tomorrow so that I can see, because I feel it is my patriotic responsibility to go, to see, to hear, to listen, and not to have secondhand information. The president says he's doing a great job. He says everything is nice. Okay, I will go and see if everything is great and nice tomorrow. I doubt it. But I will bring back their words. I will bring back their images, because I think it is important that as member of Congress, we also are there. And I know that there are delegations getting organized. So, vamos a ser bien claro. El fuego y furia de los Estados Unidos debe estar presente en Puerto Rico hoy. Este es el momento de usted, señor presidente, reunir todas tus fuerzas, para reunir esas fuerzas para dárselas al pueblo de Puerto Rico. Y yo sé que aquí dice Luis Gutiérrez, and so, you know, but there's a young Puerto Rican gentleman here, so I'm just...
He didn't confirm that he was coming, that's why, yes.
Okay, thank you so much.
Sure.
We saw over a week ago, as Hurricane Maria was slamming into the island, that President Trump was tweeting about the fiscal crisis there. We saw only a few days ago discussions about how it's an island and it's a very big ocean. We don't need second-grade geography lessons. We need solutions. And when we requested federal planes to go down there this weekend, we were blocked from going down. And so we'll have to take commercial or any other way to get down there to see the devastation on the island. You know, finally, we have the Jones Act waived. Finally, we have the USS Comfort down there. Finally, a general was appointed to help spearhead the efforts. Mr. President, what took so long? We have an island out of power, out of water, out of food, out of medical supplies. And those of us who live in Central Florida, we're going to be preparing to help out those who seek after arriving from airlines to Central Florida to make sure that they have the resources they need. I know our brothers and sisters in New York and Pennsylvania and Illinois and so many other places are going to be doing that very same thing. And so finally we're getting solutions, but it should have never taken this long.
Thank you. And representing the gentle lady from the Virgin Islands is Gregory Mix.
Unfortunately, Representative Stacey Plaskett, she's not here today. Why is she not here? Because she's stuck on the U.S. Virgin Islands. She can't get back here, so she's on the ground. And the conditions are so bad there that many cameras can't get there to show the true human devastation that's taking place on the U.S. Virgin Islands and those American citizens that are there. First, you had Irma come and devastate St. Thomas and St. John's. And they're still suffering. They still don't have what they need. And then all of a sudden, you have a second Hurricane 5 come through and rip off St. Croix. I have relatives in St. Croix. Not been able, talking about lack of communication, zero communication on the Virgin Islands. Hospitals, only 2, both of them inoperable. Where do they go? Both of the major hospitals in the U.S. Virgin Islands are inoperable. Gas? None. The lines are around the corner. Water? None. Schools? None. 90% of the structures gone. Jobs? None. The major portion of employment was the government. The governor there in the USVA says he doesn't know if he can pay anybody past next week. This is a real human crisis. And as indicated by my brothers and sisters here, we need an immediate federal military response. United States citizens' lives are on the line. And we need to respond in just that kind of urgency. It is just like a war. Most people who visited the Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico will tell you it's like a war zone. A war zone means that you should have the kind of recovery and attention that you would pay if we were in an actual war, to make a difference, to save the lives of the United States citizens that are at stake. So these islands, as we say, we shouldn't have a geography lesson. These islands called the United States Virgin Islands needs its United States government to stand up and to get in there, not tomorrow, not even waiting. The president don't have to wait for a bill. We need to get the bill done here, but utilize his executive order as commander-in-chief and order the military into the U.S. Virgin Islands and Puerto Rico immediately to save American lives.
Thank you. Thank you. And I know, let me take this opportunity again to thank all of you for being here. So if there is any questions, yes.
So I know it's early days, but do
So based on previous Category 4, this was the Category 5 when hit Puerto Rico. Based on those and during George that hit Puerto Rico, and the estimates that have been done so far, not by FEMA or the Puerto Rican government, but some of the insurance company, they're saying that it will take between 50 to 70 billion dollars in Puerto Rico. So I don't, you know, that's the numbers that I could share with you. Well, before when you see previous natural disasters like this, and they come up with a number, the number that is included in the supplemental package reflects the estimates that have been presented to us.
I just want to say a couple of things about that. Number one, cost sharing for the people of Puerto Rico should be waived by the federal government. I don't know how many of you know, but there's kind of like when you go see a doctor and they say there's a copay. Well, there should be no copay. It's bankrupt. There is no money in Puerto Rico to make co-payments. We should send the resources in there and the president. And secondly, when it comes to the debt, let me remind everybody, since 1920, since we imposed the Jones Act, which says that everything that leaves that island and everything that comes into that island must be on an American-built ship and with a manned by American citizens. The most expensive way to get anything or anything in or out of that island. If you take the cumulative cost of that imposition over the last 97 years, it exceeds the debt that Puerto Rico has.
So in terms of the cost sharing, they waived the requirement, the matching fund, for 180 days. We're sending a letter saying that they need to do for a longer period, including non-emergency resources.
Congresista, en español, por favor, le podemos preguntar un poco una reacción a lo del Jones Act y al hecho de que usted que acaba de ir a Puerto Rico no pueda quizás volver a ir de manera con ayuda federal como el congresista Soto, que no le estén dejando ir, y su reacción a lo del Jones Act, si es suficiente o es demasiado tarde.
No, it's only for 10 days. Oh, perdóname. Es por solamente 10 días que se otorgó el waiver con relación al Jones Act. En la carta que yo envié al presidente junto a José Serrano y a la delegación de Nueva York y otros, pedimos por un año. So, nosotros vamos a seguir poniendo presión. La diáspora puertorriqueña y la comunidad latina ha sido instrumental en enviar mensajes a la Casa Blanca pidiendo el que se levante, se otorgue el waiver con relación al Jones Act.
Just real quick, now it's been hit upon over and over again that Puerto Ricans are Americans. We get that. However, Florida, Texas, they have military installations all over those states. However, you, Congressman Gutierrez, along with a number of individuals within the caucus here, went out of their way back in 2003 to kick the Navy out because of Vieques. And now, as far as military access, Puerto Ricans don't have access to a military base anymore.
Okay, so,
how do you respond to that?
yes.
You're essentially treating Puerto Rico as a foreign country.
Let me tell you this. Puerto Rico and Vieques, a very small, very tiny island. Very small island with 10,000 people population. The military and the Navy bombed the hell out of them. Today, the cancer rate in the island of Vieques is very high. It was pollution with uranium. So yes, I went to Vieques. I got arrested, and we and the President Bush left it. Huh?
What's the unemployment rate there since the Navy left?
I don't care what it is. What I care is that we, the United States, is not going to bomb more than 2/3 of the island of Vieques. Yes.
Congresswoman, first for the record, I want to remind that Puerto Rico fought a Navy decided to leave Roosevelt Road. That's two different issues. But also, now that this emergency is going on, and we have the promesa.
We owe it to the 200,000 Puerto Ricans who have died fighting this country, fighting in every war. Oh my God.
What to do with that law?
What law?
The promesa law.
Uh-huh.
And the control board. How Puerto Rico can deal with the emergency? How can they
Yeah. So as you know, the board provided $1 billion in authorization to the governor, but I believe that the board has to revisit the fiscal plan based on the new reality of Puerto Rico, and they have to amend it accordingly. Yeah.
Yo creo también nosotros necesitamos una exempción por fondos de FEMA por la Junta Fiscal. Está muy importante. Estos fondos están usados solamente por reconstrucción y no para repagar la deuda.
Any other question?
Congresista, si puede responder,
Ajá.
perdón, que no me respondió la parte del hecho de que usted, por ejemplo, no podría ir mañana con fondos federales para la isla. ¿Qué le parece eso? Y el congresista Soto quizás no va a poder ir, pero ¿qué le parece eso que hayan limitado sus dineros?
Bueno, de acuerdo a la excusa que se ha presentado es que FEMA está pidiendo que no se interfiera con las operaciones que están ocurriendo ahora mismo en Puerto Rico, de relief y de limpieza. Y el llevar delegaciones de congresistas va ¿cómo se dice? A impedir los procesos que se están dando ahora mismo. Yo pedí, y junto a mis compañeros aquí, que se designara un general que va obviamente a oversee todo el proceso y veremos, basado en el assessment que ellos han hecho, esa es la determinación que ellos han tomado. Yo quisiera saber que el militar, el general, el que ha tomado esa decisión y que no sea, por ejemplo, la Casa Blanca.
No podemos, en mi opinión, no podemos perdernos en diferencias de opiniones que tengamos sobre algún tema después que el tema no sea uno de crisis, que crea una crisis en Puerto Rico. El momento es para nosotros aquí en el Congreso cooperar con las agencias federales, el gobierno de Puerto Rico, pedir, exigir, pero también cooperar como las agencias federales como lo están haciendo. O sea, si la petición de todos sitios es envolver más a los federales, pues entonces tenemos que tratar de trabajar con ellos y no impedir la labor que ellos están haciendo.
Last question.
Yeah. Well, so the situation in Puerto Rico, given the topography, given the fact that so many communities in remote areas, they call vote, in remote areas where the roads are obstructed, where bridges were flowed away, that we need someone overseeing the entire operation. One problem that they are facing is that there are 3,000 containers, shipping containers sitting at the port. They don't have trucks. They don't have the manpower. So only a top general could assess and then request the kind of assets that only the Army could deploy. We requested for the an aircraft to go to Puerto Rico, carrier, with helicopters, so that we could reach a lot of the areas that they are sending runners because there's no way to get to those places.
Very briefly, there's a misunderstanding here, and maybe it's just a lack of information. The military traditionally has done more than fight wars. The military knows how to go and build a town, knows how to rebuild a town, it knows how to evacuate people. It has medical facilities, It has communications facilities. It has a corps of engineers that can do whatever it needs to do. So when you have the military on the ground, you have more than a force for fighting, because that's not what they're there for. You have one that can give you all kinds of services.
family, people that to the family, but that shows you that how far we've come.
I think he said like Gentillo the first time he went. He just said it was. It's very casual, but yeah. And she brings a bunch of people from the world around. I think his kids will be there. I've never been able to go, and I was going to go this year. Maybe a whole bottle of Prosecco.
Yeah, about wait.
I think it's Italian liqueur. It's a cocktail party. It's only from like 2 to 6, but it's very cool.
Hey, what promotion did you tell me to go to? 181 or 182? Okay, all right. Breathing hard, man.
What? Dave? On Bronte?
He might have been. Delecto. Taking some executive action. See, the only problem, Brian, is when you get old and you do TV work, you got to pee every hour. You can't remember what the emotions you got for you. Can you dig it?
Yes, I can.
See, my thing is when I retire, I'm going to have a roving Tim's roach cook. You see the off bag? Yeah, roach cook, right? I sell coffee, burgers, and pig.
Hey, Mike, Brian over at Chapel Hill. Hey, I'm plugged into Alicia Warren's house, tab 3.
Really the big trouble one time when we announced over the PA system.
It said in the house, let me see.
At the roach coaches.
House 3 of the Cap Hub router.
You know, he did like or something.
And that was here in DC when he did. That was over there in the county. I was there when he did it.
Okay, left side only.
Hey, how about that Rick? How
Right
long
side's gonna
did it
be
possibly take for this guy to get thrown out?
That was in the Hall of Fame.
All right, 72?
He had
Climbs up on top of his money.
Yeah, it's 72.
a personal sex scandal. Yeah, I mean, this finally.
Call girls for the recruits.
Yeah, he's not the only
All
one.
around. No, but everybody does it. When you got $1 billion industry.
This is just the tip of the iceberg. That's the tip of the iceberg.
Well, that's a deal. That's the smallest company.
This is going to go on.
Nike and Under Armour and all them.
This is going to go.
So what should they do? They should just pay the guy straight up and get rid of all the rest. And just pay.
How they get money? It's unbelievable. Yes, so I'll get you in this college.
Yeah, but how they used to do it, they've always done it like that.
Okay, yeah.
I lived in South Carolina where Frank McGuire was coaching
But
USC.
you know what?
And they just come there and put the bag of money down in front of you. You know, you can go into the car dealership, sign for a car. I knew Tommy Boswell now.
My teammates
guys
had
didn't
cars.
pay back then. So these guys didn't pay for nothing. And they gave you your grant, you know, for being low income. That was your spending money. You know, 'cause they paid for the room, board, food, everything else.
You know, back then,
And then the
nobody's paying
boosters,
attention.
bought you everything. You know, you needed clothes. Okay, well, J.W. Collier, you know, he's one of our big boosters here. You go down there, pick out what you want to sign. Need a car? Go over to Jerry Shep.
Those are the boosters.
But it was all wide open back there. You know, so it's always been like that. It's just that, you know, they tried to, you know, they forced these guys into, you know, going underground.
Those were called recruiting rules.
Right.
So
sales, ticket sales, media. I was at a full ride. I know all about it. It's unreal, man. Oh, I ran track when I was in school with the, I went to all places, man, HBCU. There was no money involved. I ran a half mile, a mile, and sometimes middle distance.
I ran hurdles and got a really bad inflammation.
College is like college, yeah. Well, we didn't generate any money, so when Tom Lang came along, they got rid of us and baseball and that kind of thing.
Yeah, Pelosi's there around here.
We all that stuff.
We got a little long wait, fellas.
Wait, she's got one before.
Or is it, he's got one before Ron?
Yeah,
It's her then Ron, yeah. That's her first. There, she's in the pink. She always does. White line? Yeah, it must be, because then she's got pink on it. Yeah, she was, down in the front row.
Who's this?
Scalise. Scalise came back. I thought for sure we'd be all over that. Oh, that was. You think they'll, promote the legislation?
Nope. Negative. Can't do it with kindergarten.
pray. And I will tell you, it gave me an unbelievable sense of calm, knowing that at that point it was in God's hands. But I prayed for very specific things. And I will tell you, pretty much every one of those prayers was answered. And they were some pretty challenging prayers I was putting in God's hands. But he really did deliver for me and my family. And it just gives you that renewed faith and understanding that the power of prayer is something that you just cannot underestimate. So I'm definitely a living example that miracles really do happen. The first place I want to go to thank true angels along the way starts with the United States Capitol Police. When I was elected majority whip, as you know, the elected leadership has a security detail. If anybody ever wondered why we're assigned security detail, I surely found out that day. And let me tell you, I want to specifically mention Crystal Griner and David Bailey. Crystal and David were assigned to my security detail that morning. And day in and day out, they're part of our family. Jennifer, I truly do treat them as part of our family because they're with us everywhere we go. And on that day, it was no different. On June 14th, they came 6:30 in the morning. We arrived at the baseball field just to play and practice for a game of charity baseball. And nobody would have suspected what ensued. And yet, as soon as those shots were fired, I'll tell you, when I was laying on the ground, one of the things I prayed for is that David and Crystal would be successful in carrying out their duties. And both David and Crystal were incredibly well trained, incredibly professional. But when I was laying there, not long after the first couple of shots were fired, I could hear a different caliber of weapon. And that told me that they had immediately engaged the shooter. And let me tell you, if they didn't act so quickly, and even after being shot both themselves, continued to engage the shooter and ultimately got him down, which not only saved my life, but saved the life of a lot of other people that are here in this chamber today. Crystal couldn't be with us today, but David Bailey is with us. David, you are my hero. You saved my life. And I really thank you so much.
Ryan's will still be here at 11:30. Yeah, and then after Ryan's will be Pelosi's now instead of. Sorry for the confusion.
Above all else, I want to thank my lovely wife, Jennifer.
What the heck is going on here?
Those of you who know her know how strong I am on this. She's an incredibly warm and loving wife, and she's an incredible mother to our children. Somehow, through the late nights, the surgeries, all the other things, she managed to hold our family together, make sure that Harrison and Madison were cared for as well. And still to this day, she's not only by my side, but she's also serving as a great mother. I am lucky to have you. Thanks for being here. Love you, sweetheart.
Oh. Well, they've been saying that, right? They say.
And while it's been a challenging time for my family, the thing that really overwhelmed us from the start was the outpouring of love and warmth and prayers. From Southeast Louisiana, the district that I represent, we saw blood drives at St. Catherine. We saw prayer groups at First United Methodist Church in Slidell. But what we also saw
I mean, I think that's the whole debate, right? Is that
prayer
people
groups
do agree that there could be some amount of
well wishes being given from people that we never met before throughout all of your districts. And you shared it with me. And it was one of those things that was hard for us to completely comprehend that you had people from all walks of life that had never met me before, yet they saw what had happened. And they just went off of prayers. And let me tell you, to each and every one of you, and please convey it to your constituents, and I sure convey it to my constituents back home. That warmth and love gave us just incredible strength that you can't imagine during some really, really difficult times. And so that is one more example of the power of prayer. Something else I saw wasn't a surprise to me, but it was the outpouring of love from you, my colleagues, both Republican and Democrat. I know right after the shooting, we were practicing on the Republican side and Democrats were practicing too. And my colleague and friend and sometimes arch rival in baseball from back home in New Orleans, unfortunately the star of the game at both times, Senator Griffin somehow figured out the Johnson for the Post Louisiana, got there, probably the first person there on the scene in his baseball uniform to check on him. So many others, and both Republican and Democrat reached out in ways that I can't express the gratitude and how much it means to me, Jennifer, and our whole family. It really does show the warm side of Congress that very few people get to see. And so I want to thank each and every one of you for that. You don't know how much it meant to me. And when I come back into this chamber here today, just seeing the faces.
Right, because what they're arguing, what they're,
It just means
yeah,
more to
they've
me than
always
you can
said that
imagine.
they
So
plan to
thanks for all of that love
deductions,
and support.
right? That they're going to get rid of something in the code.
A lot of people ask, can I change you?
So both the
Those of you who know me know I'm
$1.5
an optimistic person. I'm just a fun-loving person. I'm from South Louisiana. We believe we work hard and we play hard and joie de vivre.
The $2.2 trillion
Is an event like this going to really change that? And the first thing I can tell you is,
they're saying
yes, it changed me, but
that
not
is also
in the
a
way you might
static
think.
number, and that does
It's
include,
only
however,
strengthened
all of the
by
deductions
faith in
that
God,
have been identified
and it's
in the
really
code under the framework so far,
what
right?
it
So
shows up
both
with
the
the goodness
1.5 and the
I got to
2.2
see
trillion are
that
static
goodness in
figures.
people.
So
And so
the
while some
difference
people might
between
focus on
what
a tragic event and an evil act,
CRFB
to me,
and
all I
Senate
remember
Republicans are saying,
are the
versus what the
thousands
White
of
House is
acts of
saying is
kindness
largely
and love and warmth
economic
that
growth.
came out of this
Now, the
that
Senate
kept me
Republicans
of us at MEC reached out.
And spending
Other world
offsets
leaders
would
also reached
would
out.
make it deficit neutral,
People I'd never met before.
not revenue
And
neutral.
that touched me in a different way because each and every one of us, we come here and we fight for the things that we believe in. I have
Yeah,
passionate
that's a
beliefs.
whole other separate problem.
For some reason, some of you don't agree with all of those.
Okay. All right. Well, I have to hop here in a minute. So
We are the people's house.
I gotta
This
hop
is
here in
the
a
place
minute.
where these ideas are supposed to be debated, and we fight through those issues. But ultimately, we come together on whatever the board shows is 218. If you could put the
No, these are
majority together, that's what rules
harshly
the day.
limiting interest
It's so
deductibility,
important for having those
getting rid of
political
domestic
battles.
production.
We don't make it
I
personal.
believe that's a
Because
deduction as
one
well.
of the things I saw, and I guess this is the
Keeping
thing
the R&D
that
tax
really
credit
kept
and
me
low
coming back
income
to is I
housing tax
tried
credit.
to make
So
sense of
the
all
other
this
ones
and how
are,
can the
who
outpour of
knows?
love that I saw.
No problem.
It kept coming back to those world leaders. You know, why would leaders from around the world that I'd never met before reach out and say, Steve, get back to work. We hope you can come through this. And what it says is, sure, they cared about my well-being. But more than that, they saw this as an attack on all of us. They saw this as an attack on the institution of the United States Congress and our government. And they really count on us to be successful. Look, we all know the United States is the leader of the free world. It's something that we've frankly had the honor as a country to hold as a distinction for generations. And yet, when you look at that title, what it really means is that there are people all around the world that want freedom, maybe that have freedom, but they know the United States being strong is critical to the rest of the world having the opportunity for freedom. But that's why I'm so excited to be back, because as we're fighting through the issues of the day, let's just keep in mind that we rise above the challenges of the day and understand that it's not just us and our constituents and the country, the United States, that's counting on us being successful. People all around the world that believe in freedom are counting on us as well, and we will deliver for them. That's why I'm so honored to be back in the House serving with you. God bless each and every one of you, and God bless the United States of America. Mr. Speaker, with that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back balance of time. For what purpose does the minority leader seek recognition?
Mr. Speaker, I am content to speak out of order to join you in thanking God for the return of our colleague Steve Scalise and to do so, having to do so in such a strong way. Your brief, Mr. Speaker, I'll be even briefer. Thank God our prayers are answered. I take great pride in Steve because we're both Italian Americans, and I think that's the source of some of our strength. Right, Steve? I too want to say how proud we are of Jennifer Harrison and Madison and of your staff and of our first responders, our Capitol Police, who took such good care of you. But if it is who said, an attack on you is attack on all, we all came through this magnificently.
people's house, like you said, for the first time since the shooting. With me right now, David Valiant and Phil Madden, who were listening along in this powerful moment. Phil, is it one of these moments that just give you chills, and that it's really important that you were there to be able to witness it? Just seeing Steve Scalise there and the powerful message that he gave, that he is a living example that miracles can really happen.
Flashback 3.5 months ago, Kate, and just how powerful it was that everybody was so shaken. Nobody could believe the vulnerability. Nobody could believe the targeted attack that occurred. Perhaps more importantly, nobody knew if Congressman Scalise was going to be okay. There were several days and several nights where it was very touch and go. Congressman referenced those, and I think one of the most interesting and probably best moments of what was an excellent portrait in the House floor was finding out that police officer talks to him along with Christopher Banner, who's in the audience. Yeah, he's going to be he was made very clear how to save his life on the operating table multiple times as well. And I also want to point out the administration behind Congressman Scalise, Senator Richmond, Democrats from Louisiana, ideologically disparate individuals, unwilling to hear one another, and they're also on the opposite side of the debate.
Does anyone need sound check or white balance? Test 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Great. You still need audio? Are you good? Sorry.
budget, recap my deficit question. We also talked about capital gains, and then will be the side. And then I'll mention the pass-throughs after that.
Where was it?
Deficit, capital gains, side, pass-throughs.
Ooh, if I was making that on deficit, what should I say? We definitely need a deficit neutral bill.
Package must be deficit.
After 7-year-old boy spot.
Oh, wow. Good for him. Good for him. At least he recognized it. Mom, look. Yeah.
And then paraphrase what you are going to emphasize on capital gains for the banner.
Cut to capital gains, quote, casualty of healthcare bill. Or of healthcare failure, or something like that. Okay, Sutton.
in tax reform is getting a budget done. And I asked the Speaker whether he believes a tax package should be deficit neutral. He said that it has to be in order to comply with the rules they're using in order to pass this legislation. And he's entirely right, but that's a different tack than the Senate appears to be taking. They've reached a tentative deal for a $1.5 trillion tax cut, so we'll see which way this goes. Speaker Ryan also talked about why the capital gains tax was not addressed in this framework. Ryan also talked about the importance of lowering the rate for pass-through businesses. He's going to be headed out to Pennsylvania and expected to talk a little bit more about that as well later on today. Back over to you.
Okay, we'll do. I don't think they will do anything, right? We will certainly listen. We will certainly listen. Okay, thank you.
That may be how they think they can pay for it, but the rules of the Senate are also quite clear in that you cannot use dynamic scoring in order to make the numbers work outside of that 10-year budget window. So they will have to find a way to ensure that this does not add to the deficit after 10 years if they want to use these special rules to pass tax reform.
Okay.
Are you?
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for being accommodating. At the time we would be originally scheduled to meet this morning, we had a wonderful, joyous occasion on the floor of the House, which I'm sure you have all seen, with the return of our colleague, the Majority Whip, Steve Scalise. What was so exciting for us, though, is he walked onto the floor. He walked onto the floor with all of the challenges that he has had. So thank God that our prayers are answered. We thank Jennifer Harrison and Madison, his family, for the support they gave him, the Capitol Police, the physicians, his staff. So many people made his triumphant return possible today. I give credit to his Italian-American heritage making him so strong, but that's just a relationship that we have had over the years. Okay, so earlier this week, the Republicans withdrew the latest version of Trump Care. Americans overwhelmingly made their voices heard. I'm so proud of the outside effort for people telling their stories. There were over 2,000, whether it was phone banks, town hall meetings, visits to congressional offices, just so much activity on the part of people telling their stories and how Trump Care would be harmful to their family's health and economic health as well. But again, while we were happy on the day that the bill was pulled again, we must be ever vigilant. They're talking about doing it next year. It's like a zombie. It keeps rising up, and we have to keep putting a stake in its heart. But in any event, it's really important that we defeat it. And then we have to be vigilant because the president is threatening to withhold vital payments, which help to lower costs for most Americans, cutting the enrollment period in half and disrupting enrollment and slashing funding for healthcare.gov advertising. The idea is, when I say most Americans, I mean most Americans in the exchanges. It's important to have the outreach because the more people in the program, in the insurance plan, the lower the cost, the healthier the country, and they're jeopardizing that. But we will try to make up with it in crowdsourcing and other messages to people to sign up. So happy it's pulled, ever vigilant, always prepared to protect our care. And I thank again all of the groups, the little lobbyists, the children who were here when the announcement was made. That was a happy coincidence. To all of the groups, whether it's patients groups or healthcare providers, religious groups, and the rest, who said, no way. Again, because of what the president has been saying over the coming days, families will suffer consequences of Republicans' sabotage efforts and insistence on wasting this month. They wasted a month on another bad Trump Care effort instead of moving in a bipartisan way to stabilize the market and lower cost. And we've called upon the Speaker to let us join. The Senate is engaged in bipartisan conversation on this. Mr. Chairman Lamar Alexander, and I guess they call them vice chairs on the Senate side, Vice Chair Patty Murray, are engaged in that negotiation. We think that the House should play a role in that too. So we've called upon the Speaker to do that. Again, this is a very busy time. Their tax bill, which we'll get to in a moment. But right now, the urgent matter before us that we have to pass legislation on is the DREAM Act. In our meeting with the president, he made a commitment to support the DREAM Act. He had said in previous meeting with us that he would sign the bill if it came to his desk. It is overwhelmingly supported by the American people. The Dreamers are, well, they make America dream again with their courage and their optimism of their families, and God bless their parents for providing our country with such a beautiful future. So we're hoping that whatever else the Republicans in the Congress want to do, or the president, to move the bill along, that it will be very, very soon. Again, we want to move forward to have an infrastructure bill. We have our agenda: better deal, better jobs, better pay. Infrastructure is an important part of that, and I'll get to it. But first, this Ryan McConnell framework. And whatever you do when you talk about this tax plan, don't call it reform, because it's not reform. It's just more of the same trickle-down economics that wants hardworking middle-class families to pay more as, and we're saying not one penny more in deficit, exploding tax breaks for the wealthiest in our country. We had, I don't know if some of you came yesterday or if you viewed our hearing that we had under the leadership of Richie Neal, our ranking member on Ways and Means. We had a beautiful panel to talk about what happens under, it was a coincidence. This was planned a long time ago, and here it is the day that they released their tax plan. So good, so we could review it with some experts. And one of them was Bruce Bartlett. Bruce Bartlett was, as some of you may know, part of Jack Kemp's supply-side economics initiatives. And he was there to talk about, and really we were interested in his view as to when you have a big tax bill that increases the deficit more than $1 trillion, is it true that that will be made up in dynamic scoring, or whatever the Republicans want to call it, that the growth that will spring from it will pay for the $1 trillion? He said it's not true. It's nonsense. He even resorted to calling it BS. I won't use the full term. And here he was, a supply-side economics a la Jack Kemp, saying it just isn't true that you can make up that the growth, potential growth, comes from cutting taxes for the rich. It comes from investing in the American people. Nothing brings more money, I'm saying this now, to the Treasury than the investing in the education of the American people, K through 12, early childhood education, K through 12, higher education, lifetime learning for our workers. So, but don't take it from me. Take it from Bruce Bartlett, a supply-sider way back in the day, who's saying it just isn't so. So when a speaker or others say to you, oh, we care about the deficit, and even though it's going to be $1, $2, or $3 trillion increase in the deficit, you'll see in the out years it'll make up for it. It never has, but they keep saying it. I often wonder what happened to the deficit hawks in the Republican Party, because they seem to be an endangered species. They don't seem to care about the deficit anymore. On the other hand, we on the Democratic side are pay as you go. You want a tax cut? Pay for it. You want to make an investment? Pay for it, so that we're not increasing the deficit. So this is not a tax reform. It's a tax giveaway. Same old, same old. So again, we want to fight their rigging the system even further for the wealthy and well-connected, and against hardworking middle-income families that are the backbone of America, indeed the backbone of our democracy. So that's why we're advocating a better deal, better jobs, better wages, better future, creating jobs and raise incomes for American workers, lowering the cost, whether it's prescription drugs or whatever cost, or for cost of living for American families, and giving every American the tools they need to have a place in the 21st century. Today, one of our DPCC, that's our Democratic Policy and Communications Committee co-chair, Sherry Bustos, will lead House and Senate Democrats in unveiling a new plank for our better deal, universal high-speed internet. So important to rural America. Rural America. For every farm, school, and neighborhood in America, we must have high-speed broadband. Democrats will continue to give Americans a better deal for everyone, every day, everywhere. Sadly, we are confronting the situation in Puerto Rico and in the Virgin Islands. We will continue to, this is a challenge to our conscience. All of these hurricanes have had terrible consequences. This one seems to be almost biblical in its proportion, and the challenge that it is to our conscience must be met. So we're hoping that we will have soon have a supplemental that continues to meet the needs of the people of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands and the other hurricane affected areas that we will be able to get as soon as possible. It's all about time, because time makes a difference. We'll be able to get medical personnel and supplies, water, food, issues that technologies that relate to communication and transportation and energy and generators and the rest. We have to move as quickly as possible. And again, we can't make the people of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands whole right now, but we can give them great hope that we understand the challenge and we are here to meet it. And I have some specifics on that if you want to ask some questions about that. Any questions? Yes, Carolyn.
Yes, Madam Leader, I'd like to get your thoughts on some gun legislation that's sort of moving toward the floor. One would, critics say, would deregulate silencers, and another would undermine concealed carry laws in states like California.
Yes. Well, and in addition to that, it's the silencers, it's the conceal and carry, and it's also armor-piercing bullets. I mean, this is really very dangerous. And I wish the American people, there's so much going on right now, but I was very proud of our Democrats in committee as they fought this, and they put it forth again under a facade of it's for hunters. Hunters need bullet-piercing, armor-piercing bullets. They need silencers. They need conceal and carry to hunt. So again, we all understand that the Second Amendment exists. We respect the rights of people to have gun ownership. The fact, though, that they're making it more dangerous for our first responders to have to deal with armor-piercing bullets. Silencers, even in the case of Steve Scalise, if you can hear, you can run to the where the tragedy is emanating from. It's horrible. Again, they always name things, and you can just turn it upside down. So, we'll fight it, but, they'll have the votes, and the president seems to be on that path. But if you do care about gun safety, and what we have talked about is a compromise where we have bipartisan support. We have the bill. Mike Thompson of California is, and Peter King are the co-authors of it. They are Mike is the chair of our gun safety task force. He's a hunter. He's a decorated war hero, so he knows about guns in terms of recreational and what you really do need for that. And it's only about what we're saying is we want to be able to make sure that there are background checks on people having who want to own guns. It's very simple, and it overwhelmingly is supported by the American people. Instead, the Republicans are going in a different direction. Yes, ma'am.
I wanted to ask your response. There's a growing scrutiny on President Trump's cabinet members, many of whom are private charter jets, specifically Tom Price. I know this is something he's been critical of you for in the past. Do you think this is an appropriate use of government?
No, I don't. No, I don't. But I'm not familiar with all the details of it, but from what I've see what you all are presenting and what the president has said, this is just not right. Just not right.
Do you think it's grounds for removal?
Well, I didn't think he should be in there in the first place because what did the president do? The president appointed somebody to Health and Human Services who doesn't believe in health care for all Americans. He appointed somebody to EPA who doesn't believe in clean air, clean water. Appointed somebody to Department of Education who doesn't believe in public education, to labor who doesn't believe in workers' rights. So I don't think he should be there in the first place. And it is unfortunate that he is. For these and other reasons, I would rather somebody else be there, but who could it be? It would probably be somebody who agrees with the president on these scores. So again, in terms of all of these things, it's about the rules, it's about the law, it's about the facts. I think they have to examine that and see where he comes down in that regard. Yes, sir.
Madam Leader, the Children's Health Insurance
Yeah.
program and the healthcare extender are House Democrats insisting that CHIP and the extenders be packaged together.
Well, you know, they have. 5 years ago, Speaker Boehner and I put together the SGR package that had this extension in there for child care, the SCHIP, State Children's Health Insurance Program, and the community health centers. The Senate has a good bill, Hatch-Wyden, that is a 5-year extension of CHIP. I wish we could take that up. They've been packaged together. It's not about an insistence. What I'm concerned about is that the leadership is saying, the Republican leadership is saying, oh, they have money until later this year. We don't have to do it. Well, why don't we do it? Why don't we inject some certainty into it? 9 million children benefit from SCHIP, and it'd be nice for them to have the certainty that this has passed. Why would you say, well, we can wait? Well, we don't have to. I get your point. We're not going to be able to do it by September 30th, which is this weekend, but why aren't we doing it immediately when we come back? What is the question? You know, why would we hold it up? It's just procrastination. We're always prepared, yeah. We're always prepared. And another piece of this relates to Puerto Rico. In the spring, when we did the appropriations bill, we had in it some money for Puerto Rico, but what the thought was that when we did SCHIP and community health centers, that there would be another, we have what is called a Medicaid cliff in Puerto Rico, that we would address that then. And now we're saying, oh, what's your hurry? Well, all the more urgency because of what's happening in Puerto Rico. But maybe we can just put it in this appropriations bill, the supplemental that the Speaker mentioned we would do in October as soon as we can. That would be very promising. But you just can't let everything just drag on when it's only a decision. There's nothing new that's going to enter the discussion. It's just a decision. And it's been bipartisan. As I say, Hatch-Wyden, it's been bipartisan. Boehner, Pelosi, we put that package together before. Yes, Chad?
Going back to Carolyn's question here about the firearms legislation next week, and you alluded to Congressman Scalise returning today. What about the juxtaposition of having him return today and that legislation which you spoke so forcibly against a moment ago? What about that? Is that?
Oh, I don't know. I like to think that it's just a coincidence, but you have a more conspiratorial mind than I do, Chad.
Well, I'm not suggesting only about the San Francisco Giants. But who I know in the last place. But that said, some people thought there might be more of a conversation after Gabby Giffords, after Scalise,
yeah.
And here we are, and then you cite this piece of legislation on the floor next week.
Well, I didn't know it was scheduled for next week until Carolyn mentioned, and that you're putting with the timetable. I didn't know that. I do know that it was taken up in committee, and I was very proud of the common sense that our members injected into that discussion, especially when they're calling it something for hunters and sportsmen. Please, hunters and sportsmen don't need what that bill puts forth unless they're not a very good hunter or sportsman. But I don't think they're advocating that. I don't think they're advocating that at all, the hunters and sportsmen. But it is, no, I never even thought of that. Yes, sir.
Madam Leader, the president seems to have started a culture war against a lot of black athletes who are protesting police brutality and racial injustice in the country. I was wondering if you had a position on what the president's comments have been since last Friday, and that he's continued every single day, and if that's straying away from the legislative agenda.
Yes, it definitely is. The president is the deflector in chief. Anytime he's going to lose a health care bill, an election in Alabama, whatever it is, he's got something else he's going to try to divert attention to. And he succeeds with it because everybody's paying attention to that, right? Now, the fact is that our Constitution guarantees people the right to express themselves freely. This president has a different view, I guess, of what we salute when we salute the flag, that we salute that freedom. And the kinds of comments that he has made are beneath the dignity of his office, of our flag and of our Constitution.
Do you think that it's odd that the president is co-opting this language and changing it to unity instead of what the original message was and has been for months?
Yeah, I do. I think it's unfortunate. As the President of the United States, this is a unifying opportunity for him. I just can't answer for what's in his soul or in his heart about these things, but I do know what he says is not unifying for our country. Okay. All right. Yeah. Yes, sir.
Last question.
Huh.
The president, the speaker said that the tax framework would go into committee. Are you confident that when in committee they will reach across the aisle and get some of those democratic ideas and bring it into the tax discussion?
Well, I hope so, because there are certain things. Again, we want growth. We want good-paying jobs. We want to reduce the deficit. Okay? So if that's what we have common ground on, what are in furtherance of reaching those? What is in furtherance of reaching those goals? Certainly, they must know that plowing a big hole in the, again, increasing the deficit so dramatically, that not the deficit, the national debt so dramatically, and what that means on interest on the debt service, and the opportunity cost that is, instead of having those resources to invest in education and research and development and other initiatives that keep America number one. You have to, they say, oh, this is going to create growth and it's going to pay for the deficit, the debt. It doesn't. As I said, Bartlett even notes, less a person than a person who was a supply-side economist with Jack Kemp said, it's just not true. It's nonsense. It's BS, he said. But we said, if you want to do dynamic scoring like that, why don't you say, every dollar we spend on education brings more money back to the Treasury. Every dollar we spend and go through those investments. They don't. They don't. They're just any excuse will do to give tax cuts to their rich friends. Now, something, we're agnostic. We go in, okay, what do you have to offer? Let's see what we can find common ground on. But we do say that it must be revenue neutral. We're not there to be accomplices to increasing the deficit with a bill that does not create jobs, good-paying jobs and growth in our country. Yes, ma'am. So I'm sorry, that's it. Okay. Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Why are the Giants, why do they have the worst record in baseball?
It's really a strange year. Building year.
That's like one of the names of one of those bills. It's a building year. Thank you.
No, I went to opening game of the 49ers. They did okay.
They ain't too hot this year either.
Hmm?
They haven't been too hot lately either.
Well, they haven't won, but they played okay.
The past 3 or 4 years, they've been pretty good.
Oh. Anyway.
You have the Warriors.